In this video, I'm going to show you how to do cloud pruning. This is a yew that I started pruning a couple years ago. When I started, it was a very standard looking shrub, as in this picture. That shrub was a bit boring for this garden, so I decided to turn it into a cloud prune shrub. You can see that that shrub has various pom-poms on it, and they've been clipped so that it's nice and tight, but there's a lot of open stem. And I think that kind of pruning gives the shrub some really nice character. When I started this 3 years ago, the first thing I did was look inside the shrub and try to find all the main branches and decide which ones I wanted to keep and which ones I didn't want. And I cut it back quite drastically. Kept all the good branches, cut all of the others off. When you prune a shrub that drastically, it responds with a lot of growth. And the thing went crazy by making new shoots all over the place. But that's okay. I started getting the structure I wanted. Last year I came along and cut out a lot of the side branches that it was forming. Try to start getting these empty branches showing. And you can see it responded with even more growth. There's lots of growth on the actual pom-pom areas, and there's growth along the stems. But it's starting to take some shape. So now what I'm going to do is come back and reassess it, because this is all about aesthetics. I think this side's pretty good. If I look in here, I think things are getting a little congested. There's too many of them. There's one here, one back here, one here, one here, one here. Perhaps that's a bit much, and I have to decide if I'm going to keep all of these. I might get rid of this branch, though, just to open it up a little bit. When I looked at this 3 years ago, I found that the shrub was a bit one-sided. A lot of branches coming this way, not very much heading towards the camera. And so I took one of the new growth down here and I just left it alone. And it's now about 2 feet long, and it will be a new large branch. So in a few years it will be up here. Maybe we'll put a side branch on it, and then we'll put some pom-poms in a few spots to kind of fill in this area here. Now the one nice thing about doing this with a yew is that yews sprout from dormant buds all along the stem. So when you cut it back, it creates lots of these side branches. Now that means you have extra pruning, but it does mean that you can change your mind as you work with this shrub. All of these branches here grew since last year. We want to keep this part, and we want to keep this part, but between the two we want to develop a nice clean stem with no branches on it. It's a simple matter of going along and pruning off every one of these branches. You want to cut as close to the stem as possible. And if you remember, pruners have two sides to them. One side cuts nice and close to the trunk, and the other side doesn't because it has this foot here. So as you're cutting, always make sure you turn it to get the best cut. Now I'll go through the whole shrub and do the same thing in all the areas where I don't want any side branching. The next step in this process is to start forming the cloud. And you can see that it made a fair amount of growth last year. Some of these are almost a foot long. Whenever we make a cut, we're going to get 2 or more buds to grow. So we're going to get side branching. And we want this part in here to get very thick, as many side branches as we can get. And slowly over time it will get bigger and start growing out. So the process is really quite simple. We cut most of this growth off. You can see I'm trying to make it kind of flat, but that's not too important at this point. In a couple years we'll fine-tune that. Okay, it doesn't look too much like a cloud yet, but you have to remember this is only the second year of pruning these clouds. I try to take the tips of almost everything off because that will give me more branching. This will slowly get larger and larger each year, and I can decide how big I really want them. So now I'll go and I'll do each one of these and cut them pretty much the same way. And then next year I'll come along and redo the whole process. Clean up the trunks, clean up the clouds, and start shaping them the way I want. In 3 or 4 years, I'll have a shrub that looks just like this. It's now late fall and I thought I'd come out and trim these down a little bit more. Usually I only do it every spring, but they've grown quite a bit and I think it's time for a bit of a haircut. But we're going to take these large stems and cut them out and trim it back and try and get more of a flat top. I'm not going to do a lot of pruning at this time of the year. The other thing I'll do at this time of the year is that along the stems, it's also started making new growth. And I'm going to take all those off too. Anything we know we don't want, we might as well take off as soon as we see it. All right, now I'll do the other clouds, but you don't need to watch all of that. After watching this shrub grow for a while, I've decided that the balance of clouds is pretty good. I still have questions about a couple that I may still take out, but I'm pretty happy with the way the whole thing looks. It's got a good balance, the clouds are different heights, and that looks really good. But it's got this big hole in the middle here, and it's got nothing coming out to the viewer. The visitors to the garden will normally walk along here and look at the shrub from the camera point of view. And there's just this big hole here. Now we can fix that. In order to improve the look of this shrub, I want another branch coming out here. So a few years ago, I let one of the new growth start elongating and I didn't prune it. This is now 2 years worth of growth. You can see this year's growth is quite green. This part's woody. It's starting to come out this way. It's trying to get as much light as it can. But I don't want the branch coming way out here where people are going to walk. I want it to go up here. I want the cloud eventually to be in this area. So I have to train this a little bit. To do that, I'm going to use a long stake and put it in the ground in the direction I think I want the branch to grow, which would be more like this. And then I'm going to tie this up. Whenever I'm tying up branches like this, I like to use this jute. Jute is an organic material, and it only lasts for about a year, year and a half in the garden, and then it decomposes. So if I forget this and leave it on too long, it's going to fall apart on its own. So I never have to worry about the jute actually damaging the branch. So I'll use this part of the stem here, and then up here it's made 3 new growths. And so I have to select which one I want, and I'm going to pick the most vertical one here and get rid of the others. By taking these off, all of the new growth is going to grow up here. Remember that the tip of the plant gets the hormone to make new buds and grow. So this will now grow faster than these side laterals, and that's what we want. In this video, I've shown you 1 year of pruning. So now what happens? Well, each year I'll come along, usually in the spring, and do exactly the same thing. I can add or remove pom-poms or extra stems. I can change the direction that stems are going. The pruning for this is all the same. I like the structure the way it is, so my plan going forward is simply to make the pom-poms larger and larger. I think they need to be 3 times the size that they are now, but as they grow I'll reevaluate that. The key here is that the actual pruning operation doesn't change. I'll just keep redoing the same thing every year, and the shrub will slowly get better and better looking. If you want to learn more about pruning, have a look at my pruning playlist, and I'll put that in the top right hand corner. It contains numerous pruning videos that'll help you prune anything in the garden. Have fun in the garden.